Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say you got to hit that
I
portal.
know. I was going to say, yeah, because maybe it didn't notify us this time. I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, chat, live
Oh, there it
chat.
is.
There we
Okay.
go. Okay.
Yeah, okay. All right. Here we go. All right. On like Donkey Kong.
Here we are.
Stupid thing. All right. Well, I guess we are on. So,
Yep, we are
yeah,
on.
let's go do this on a Sunday morning again, I suppose, right?
Yep. Good morning, Calvin.
Calvin, Calvin. Yeah. All right. So, ready to go.
Morning, Estella.
So, what's going on with you, Mary? What's new?
Well, we haven't done a live in a couple of weeks, and since we did the last live, we released our episode about Canada and the Civil War, which is being from Canada, I actually learned a lot about
You're from
it.
you're from Canada?
Morning, Barbara. Morning, Scott.
Yeah. No, I mean that's the thing though. I mean I guess we haven't done one of these since we did
No,
the Canada thing, right?
no, because we had our friends from Massachusetts last week, remember?
Oh, that's how could I pause? That was geez, that feels like that was forever ago.
I know.
That was a good time. We went down to Chambersburg. We watched the burning anniversary of the burning of Chambersburg by John
Yeah.
McCausland and his band of merry men. That was fun.
Mhm.
Yeah, the Canada episode was good. That was a good time, and it was I think for you it's good that you said you learned something because I mean I can't
Yeah.
imagine there are too many Civil War nerds up in Canada. There's a lot of nerds in Canada, but not Civil War nerds.
No, and it was interesting and just real. Frank just came on here and he did his usual. What is the anniversary? Today is the anniversary of Howard taking over Army of the Tennessee.
Oh, I was wondering why there was all balloons put out this morning and well, there was a big cake in the fridge. No, that's a big deal. I mean, people, we were at a battle walk yesterday. You've probably forgotten already, but we were at a battle walk with our friend John Hoptack, and he was doing a walk on the 16th May, which is
Yeah.
my binkies, right? And I'm sitting next to a bunch of people, and they were talking about Barlow and those guys falling back from at Gettysburg on where Oak Hill is.
Yeah.
And John said, well, the 11th Corps retreated back. And this old
Yeah.
grumpy's like, as usual, they retreated.
Yeah. It's like,
Right.
just can we stop with the
And it's like,
fucking, or
it,
sorry,
it,
friggin' stereotypes?
wow. And then it was funny because then he talked about, he goes, then the first Corps retreated from the seminary. And I'm like, first Corps retreated her. Hey, people are miserable. Maybe have different things, but that was a good time though. That was fun.
No, it
That
was
was
a great. The battle walks are great. And just Estella had a comment. She said the Canada was a crazy, very informative episode, and yeah, we both learned a lot. I mean, for me, it was interesting to see how not necessarily divided the country was, but that a lot of the regular citizens of Canada, then called British North America, um, would be like they were against slavery, they were not for it, but it was the politicians, the business people, as well as just like government in general that were very kind of aligning themselves with the South. Obviously,
mm-hmm.
business people, especially in the maritime provinces, would do that
Well, there's a lot.
because of the cotton,
Yeah.
because of the trade with Britain. And I know our friend James is on here. He probably knows about that from the British side of things, just how that all went down.
Yeah.
But the other thing that was fascinating too is that like after the end of the Civil War, you had men like Jubal Early, John C. Breckinridge, and when he was released from prison, Jefferson Davis going to live in Canada, and they were warmly welcomed. City of Toronto throws Jefferson Davis a parade when he goes to visit there. And
Mm-hmm.
that to me is just like, it's like, what the, and then the area of Niagara on the Lake where you and I went a couple of years ago, where that fort was, that was an area that was settled by a lot of Confederates. I think that's where Breckinridge lived for a while. Jubal Early apparently wrote his memoirs in Toronto at what I think is now the Royal York Hotel. I have to look that up to see if it's been
Mm-hmm.
there for that long. I actually don't think it has, but it's some hotel in that area. Um, and what else is there? Just like a lot of different, just fascinating. And then like you have the Canadian Civil War Memorial in Cornwall, Ontario, which is near the Quebec border, and it lists the names of a lot of notable Canadians. And one of them was talked about briefly yesterday in the Walkabout the 16th Maine. Franklin Devereux, he was from Quebec. He was killed on July 1st in that kind of when, what's I going to say? when Tilden and the 16th Maine was asked to basically sacrifice themselves, and Franklin Devereaux was killed there. And thanks to John Hoptack, the ranger that was leading the tour, he told me that he is buried over in the National Cemetery, so I can go visit the grave of
Yeah, I mean, he's
Devereaux.
John knows his stuff when it comes to the 16 because after we were talking and you mentioned Devereaux and he's like, oh yeah, he's buried in the National Cemetery and I mean, it's great. He's definitely a proud member of our 16 is greater than 20th society, no question about that. But it's no surprise that the Canadians did like the Americans. I mean, some things never change, I guess. But we talked a lot about George Taylor Denison III. Remember him?
Yeah.
He's the guy who hated everything about the United States. He was a lawyer from Toronto.
Yeah.
He was the guy when George Washington's statue was going to be built in Westminster Abbey, of all places, which is strange they would do that. He said that if they did that, he'd go over there and spit on it.
Yeah.
So I mean there's truth to all this stuff, and it's no surprise that that they were so close to them, specifically because of how close they were aligned and still are with England. I mean, they certainly were. A strong United States that era isn't good for anybody. It really isn't, especially if you're a monarchy, because it's a challenge.
Yeah.
And so when you look at some of the Maritimes at New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, places like that, it became really a hotbed of blockade runners and people running supplies back and forth from England. So it's not surprise, and it's no surprise that when the war ended, Seward wanted Canada as reparations because Canada was a pain in his hindquarters,
Yep.
And like we said in the episode, every picture you see of him, he always looks miserable. And I swear he's thinking of Canada at that very moment because going back to the Trent Affair, November 8th of 1861, to everything going through with the Maritimes, Benjamin Weir, that whole fiasco with him, the governor of Nova Scotia. They were just a thorn in his side throughout the war. Obviously, it didn't turn out that way. Canada became its own country in 1867, although you guys still haven't thrown the tea in the water yet. So you haven't.
No, we haven't. And I mean,
thrown away the yoke of the Canadian, of the English Empire.
James has a good comment. He says he loves he loved that we emphasized that Canada was a separate power at the time. They were not just the whim of the colonial department. Like they're kind of throwing their weight around a little bit with it. Like obviously, yes, there still are colonies there. But the other thing that was interesting.
Wait, hold on. Did he say Canadian power?
Yeah, as a separate power.
I don't know about power, Mary. Let's not talk.
I think they kind of like.
Do you remember that their military got 6 days of training? Remember?
But they had
you're a power like the Buffalo Bills are a power.
We're still power.
The same colors. All right, I'm sorry. I digress. Go ahead.
No, but there was that.
I don't disagree. I'm just giving a shit.
There was I think it was one of the railways in Canada, they created a militia to protect the railways from possible the US coming up and taking stuff from the railways or taking it over. They had that. I forgot to mention that in the episode. But the other thing too was this, like, the idea of the 51st state is something that is quite prominent throughout the Civil War. Seward was doing it on the campaign trail with Lincoln.
There were 50 states at the time, though. I
know, but that's just.
I'm just being feisty with you today. You're getting all fired up about Canada.
But this idea of Canada being annexed by the United States was nothing new. No. Seward is doing it on the campaign trail. He did a speech in, I think, Minnesota, where he made some reference to like, oh, Canada, you're preparing yourself to become, to join us or whatever. And then after the Chesapeake affair, which is, we're going to do an episode about that. It's a little bit like the Trent affair, but like, I think in some ways, like, it was like, that could have been if that had went bad, that would have been really terrible, for the Union. But during that, Seward brought it back up again around Lincoln, like saying, we just need to annex them because they're a thorn in our side. Seward especially hated Halifax.
For people who didn't really listen to the episode, and if they didn't, the Chesapeake affair is one of those things everyone knows about. The Trent affair, right? But December 7th, 1863, day that will live in infamy, right, is the Chesapeake affair, and that's a similar situation. This is when Vernon Locke and John Bain, they kidnapped that boat off of Cape Cod, of all places, Mary. Yeah. Maybe Bruce the Shark was out there too in the area.
Bruce the Shark.
But for real though, you have a lot of these things going on when those guys put a crew of 16 men together,
Mhm.
and they're going to seize that ship. And again, this is when George Wade, he's going to shoot an American sailor, and it's going to cause this big international incident, and
Yeah.
Seward's going to want him executed, and blah blah blah. So if you really, the episode we did was fun, but if you really want to get into this stuff and you really study the Canadians and the Civil War, it's kind of like finding an old episode of your favorite show you never knew existed, because it's so fascinating. Everyone
Mhm.
talks about England, and they talk about Napoleon and France. They talk about all these people that affected the Civil War, not the Napoleon, but the ancestor
Yeah.
Napoleon. They Canada was there. I mean, it goes, and then it continues on with the Fenians afterwards, with the Irish. You guys are always up to something, although you still can't win a
Yeah.
Stanley Cup.
No, we
You
can't.
think you think with that much piss and vinegar, you'd find a way to back your way into it.
But the thing with when Seward went to Lincoln again in early 64 after the Chesapeake affair, and Lincoln, he totally, like, in his State of the Union, he just was, you could tell he was not happy with Canada. Like, but Seward went to him and said, like, well, hey, why don't we try to annex them again? And Lincoln just said, I only want to fight one war at a time.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, if I go and try and annex Canada, that's going to be another war, and I don't really feel like doing that right now. It's
No,
just it's just interesting, and, like, all the different names, like we talked about Solomon Secord on the episode as well.
Solomon Secord is somebody who probably is deserving of a full episode. The only
Yeah.
challenge with a lot of the stuff is that there's not a lot out there on them.
No,
That's
there's
the problem.
there's a lot of conflicting information about him, and he like, I found different stories of when he came back to Canada, and there's the whole, like, he's got the whole controversy now with the monument being removed.
Yeah, and that's one of those overreactions. We've talked about that a million times. But again, you're a surgeon who goes down to help people. And he comes to Gettysburg, and he ends up in, I think, was it Georgia he ends up in at some point? Was that where he
He
went?
went down to be in Georgia for health reasons. I
Did they write
think
a song about that? The Canadian went down to
climate,
Georgia. Wasn't it a song?
the devil went down to Georgia.
Oh, I forgot. But no, but he ends up working in the same, the plank farm on the same hospital that Hood is on, and who knows, maybe even helped him out or worked on him. But and he says, enough of this, I'm going home, and he goes home, and he goes up to Kincardine,
Yep.
where the famous Dairy Queen is, your old
Yep.
job, when you were the Dairy Queen of Kincardine.
Kincardine.
They end up putting a monument for him right
Mhm.
downtown. And when I say downtown Kincardine, that's like saying a power of Canada, if you know what I mean. It's not exactly a thriving metropolis,
No,
but
it's not.
but unfortunately, they took the monument down, and it's unfortunate because I think you mentioned in the episode that his family wanted the monument,
Yeah.
and they said, well, and they kept sending letter after letter, we'll buy it, just give it to us, and they never responded to him. Then when they said, oh, we've got to tell you we destroyed it, it's gone. Oops.
Yeah, like, it's like, I'm like, whoa, this is bad. Like, it's almost like a kind of, I don't want to say scandal, but and Solomon Secord was a guy that when he came back, he was, Bruce County is the neighbor of Huron County where I grew up. He was the physician in Bruce County, and he was known for not charging people. If they couldn't pay, he was like, well, whatever, it's fine. Or they would give him something in kind, they would give him, chickens or something like that, or food, or, like, grain or whatever. And I just think his story is really fascinating because he's very sought after, because Canadian surgeons were trained the British way, so they trained on cadavers, so he could do amputations in 10 minutes. He's trained specifically how to do that. And there was another Canadian surgeon here at Gettysburg as well. And he was over with the Second Corps, same thing. And it was like, just they're sought after because they do it so quickly. And Solomon Secord is operating on soldiers north and south for 24 hours straight over at the Plank Farm.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's fascinating that even your national anthem was written by Calixa Lavallee, a Canadian musician who served in the 4th Rhode Island as a musician.
Yeah.
And so even your song that they play up there before hockey and baseball and everything else up there was written by an American Civil War veteran. So there's so many connections to Canada.
Yeah. And then there was
waiting to be discovered, which is really cool.
And the men from the 54th Mass,
Yeah.
as well. There was that one African American that you talked about, the doctor.
Yeah. It's funny because when you look at a lot of the people, oh, Anderson Ruffin Abbott, the doctor,
Yeah.
he was the first black surgeon in Canadian
Hmm.
history,
Yeah.
and he ends up coming down to serve, and they to DC, and they don't take him, they don't want him, and he ends up hanging around Washington DC and becomes kind of a socialite in the town, and that's when he became that FOL we talked about. Remember,
Yeah.
the friend of Lincoln.
Yeah. He took Elizabeth Keckley over to the night of the assassination over to what's it called?
Hmm.
The house where Lincoln was.
Hmm.
Name's escaping me now. But he knew Abraham Lincoln, and he goes back to Canada, and he's very successful. He's one of 13 African American doctors in the Civil War.
Hmm. Yeah, there's so much, and that was just fun. When it was you knew a lot of this stuff already. For me, I knew some of it. It's always good to research the stuff and find some connections that you don't really think exist. Because I think people, like we said a little while ago, people are surprised to see how much impact that Canada had. Because like I said before, you just don't think of Canada. You think obviously think of St. Albans raid. You think of the blockade. You might think about the Maritimes. You're going to think about John Wilkes Booth in Montreal, and you're going to think about Jefferson Davis and stuff like that. But you don't think a lot about their actual impact.
No.
But it's impressive. It just is. And what would have been fascinating to see is play the old what if game that you like to do so much.
Mhm.
Is what if Canada? This was 1867 had come earlier, and Canada was its own country, and they can make its own decisions. Now, this is what I'm saying is if they were totally cut loose from the crown,
Yeah.
which still hasn't happened. So it's fool's errand to run this one, but how they might have participated in this war too, because they served two masters as well, because they had a
Yeah.
lot of ties to the North and the South, and how that would have played itself out.
Yeah. Well,
You know?
businessmen and politicians were especially tied to the South, especially if you were like that guy in Halifax who's like, I'm going to keep doing this stuff for the South because otherwise I'm not going to be making any money.
Yeah.
And he was connected to the blockade. Like, there was guys running the blockade down in the South as well. And then there was that one guy, a rear admiral, who was trying to stop the blockade as well. Like, there's so many like different ways that Canada plays a role. So it was a fascinating episode to do. Jeffrey said that he really enjoyed it,
Okay.
and he's wondering if you chose bourbon for your coffee creamer or do you put maple syrup in it?
Um, who puts maple syrup in their coffee? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I think so.
What is wrong with you people? No, that's a good question though.
Um,
I don't do bourbon. I'm not a big bourbon guy. It's once in a blue moon, sit by a fire with a cigar, get that thing going.
yeah.
I'm more of a beer guy.
So and then Brooklyn mentions a book, and I know of this book because we got it in at the library I work at. Lincoln's Peace by Michael Vorenberg. It just came out. I think it's the book that's got the picture of him with Sherman and Grant and
Oh,
Porter.
okay.
Yeah, it's a new one.
Interesting.
And then he also asked when,
Interesting.
like, and this is, I'm sure everybody knows, Civil War support, like he asked, when did the Civil War end? Most people say April 9th, 1865, but that was just the surrender of Army Northern Virginia.
No, I mean, it's a good question. There are some people in the South who still think it's not over, that
Yeah.
they're reloading. The actual final surrender took place on June 23rd, 1865. And this is when Stan Wadey actually surrenders on the CSS Shenandoah. And that's one that came way after, obviously, Lee, way after Joseph E. Johnson. And that's one that came later on. And also, you take a peek at some of these other ones, you can trace surrenders all the way up to into 1860, 1865 at the end of it too. But
Mhm.
Stan Wadey is the one they call the great final Confederate surrender. So he'd probably be the one, if you really want to look at specific dates. When Lee surrendered in Appomattox, that was just his army. I mean,
Yeah.
you had 22 Confederate armies operating in the Civil War.
Yeah.
22. You had 16 Union armies. So although the Army of Northern Virginia was the largest one, that's the one people celebrate the end of the war. But yeah, this thing went on and on and on. And I think Wadey, he surrendered at Fort Towson in
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
Well, I think that's what this book, Lincoln's Peace, is about, is talking about when did the Civil War actually
Yeah.
end. So it's probably detailing all of
But
that.
it's fascinating to think about it though, because it's a great question because
Mhm.
it goes on and on and on. but I think it depends on who you ask. I mean, if you ask people around here, they're going to tell you it's April 9th. But if you really look at if you really study it, I would probably say uh, probably June of 1865, or November 6th of 1865 when the CSS Shenandoah surrendered in Birmingham,
Yeah.
England. I mean, that's you can probably go either one. We'd accept either answer here, Mary.
Yeah.
As long as you put in the form of a question.
When did it end?
Oh, but it's just a long answer to a short question, which I tend to do, but it's okay.
Yeah, and someone else mentions, the surrender of the Shenandoah. And James asked, northernmost battle of the Civil War, the Kearsarge.
I mean, that's again, it goes back to what the battles are. I think the Albans Raid is one that's considered here as one of the more northern ones. I know that, and the reason why I say that is because there was a Elmer Morrison, the guy who got killed. He was a mechanic from Manchester, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Elmer Morrison was killed. He was the one fatality at St. Albans Raid, and he's credited as being the most northernmost casualty in the American Civil War. So I'll go with St. Albans. That's what I think.
But we are going to be doing an episode about it.
It's true.
I think we came up with like 3 different episodes that kind of go off of the Canada one, and one of them is St. Albans. One of them is a Chesapeake affair, and the other is you could do an episode at any number of the people that we talked about. And we've talked about a lot of Canadians before. We've mentioned Sarah Edmonds before, Lieutenant Doherty, Secord, obviously, but there's numerous other ones that they're deserving of an episode because their story is one that needs to be told, and it's something that we don't study it in Canada. Like, we don't know, like, I'm going to go over to the cemetery at some point and take a picture of Franklin Devereux's where his marker is, and he's one of, I want to find out how many
maybe we'll do that.
Canadians
Maybe we'll do that today, perhaps.
That'd be good.
And stumble over the cemetery. We're in the cemetery. We did a tour of the cemetery a couple of days ago.
Yeah, it was a good tour.
And what's good about some of these battlefields, especially this one, is you can do these tours, and for the most part, they're free if you arrange a tour. If you actually want a formal tour, but you learn something new every single time.
Yeah.
You always teach an old dog like me new tricks, because it was great. Because I always wondered, there was that body that was found in 1996 by the railroad cut up the street here, and I was curious where he was buried, because and then we finally saw where it was. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. And then Caleb asks, has anybody been to Wilson's Creek? Neither of us have been, but we want to go. And then Calvin mentions an episode about Indigenous peoples fighting in the war. That would be another good one too. We've talked about them briefly. I think where is that? Pea Ridge?
We talked about Pea Ridge. We talked about Albert Pike and the Indian Brigade. We talked about that. But yeah, Stan Wadey, we just talked about him a second ago. There are a lot of that too. We're going to be doing an episode pretty soon here on the Amish, the Mennonites in the Civil War. And that's one, and that one popped into my head one day. We were doing a reenactment over at the where the hell that was, at the train one. We're doing a reenactment about a month or so ago. It's the Strasburg Railroad reenactment.
Yeah.
And it's out by Lancaster, which if you know Lancaster, Pennsylvania, it's a lot of Amish. And you see Mennonites here in Gettysburg a lot. You see the carts go up and down the street.
Yep.
And it popped into my head, could I be Amish? And I'm still debating. I'm making that switch. Okay. I don't know if I can cut the mustache off though, right? But also how they reacted into the Civil War. And so it set me down a rabbit hole studying, the Amish, the Mennonites, the Dunkers, the Quakers, all the party boys, right? And talking about how their non-resistance attitudes affected the Civil War. And it's fascinating because you had, speaking of the Amish and the Mennonites, they had strong populations both in the North and the South, and how they dealt with conscription, with their belief, they're Anabaptists, they get baptized when they're older. And their whole thing was basically when Jesus Christ was put on the cross, he didn't fight it. He just took it. For that reason, they are non-resistance to this day. If you go up there and you punch one of them in the head, they won't punch you back. They won't. They no violence whatsoever. So how they reacted to the Civil War, and how both governments made accommodations for them so they wouldn't have to fight. Stonewall Jackson, we'll talk about this. He was a religious fellow, Mary, and he had a lot of Amish on his army that he knew they weren't going to fight, so he wouldn't put them in the line. He put them as teamsters. In some cases, they told them just don't fire your gun, stand up in the line, just click and empty, and just don't shoot. They would say if you have to shoot, shoot over their heads. It's fascinating history that no one really studies. So
Yeah.
we'll do a whole episode on that, because it's amazing when you're looking at, speaking here, especially when Lee invaded the North a second time, okay, for Gettysburg, how you had people, there was a big fear of the Confederates coming into Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And the attitudes that the people in this state, Pennsylvania, had about having these many able-bodied young men who won't fight, and how that politically, how it dealt, how Thaddeus Stevens was a big advocate of theirs. They were anti-slavery, but they had slaves. I can have them, but you can't.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the politics of trying to figure out how to work through this religious issue in the Civil War is really fascinating. So we're going to do a whole episode on that in a few weeks. So hopefully people like that. And it's really interesting because it's one of those things like the Canadian thing that you just don't think about.
No,
it just doesn't pop into your head that often. It's but it's a great story. It really is.
Just go back to Wilson's Creek again. Caleb mentions that it's a great battlefield, very neat early history of the war. And then the indigenous peoples, Calvin mentions that Company K of the 1st Michigan sharpshooters was primarily natives from throughout the state. It's very interesting. And then Bill says that it'd be amazing to learn more about them by doing an episode about it. I think it would too. The other indigenous Native American that comes to mind is Eli Parker on Grant's staff.
Yep. Yeah, and there's that rumor that Lee said at least one American is here, and this some people said that didn't get said, and blah blah blah. But I mean, there's a lot of good stories, and there's a lot of good misconceptions, and there's a lot of that stuff too. But yeah, that's why you do history, and you learn the folklore versus the history.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and Estella asked, were there Amish living in Gettysburg?
Gettysburg is more of a Mennonite area, and it still is. Of course, I'm sure there were, but I mean, when you're looking at a lot of the Amish communities, we see a lot of them in Lancaster. Amish and Dunkers are German Baptists, right? And I'm not a religious. I don't want to say a religious college, but I went to a Jesuit college, and so I learned a little bit about that back in the day. But areas like Milwaukee, areas like Cincinnati, parts of the heavy German areas that we see today are a lot of Mennonites, and a lot of Amish. But most of the Amish are more towards past York. And people, you could take a trip to Amish country, and they have the Rumspringa Brewery that we went to, which I thought was hilarious. But when you're seeing, if you're in town here and you're seeing the wagon go up the street, and they always got that big orange triangle in the back, right? It's probably Mennonites. You know how you can tell is Amish don't have mustaches, and Mennonites do. Yeah, someone told me that. That's probably true. And you cannot grow facial hair until you get dunked at age 18.
Wow.
See, maybe I'll do the Amish thing after I'm married.
Please don't.
Maybe I'll do that. I can dress in black and I can have a carriage cruising around.
You and John Gentili are going to do the Amish thing together. That's what I want to see.
I think we should totally do that. But I think people like it because, like anything else, there's so much overkill. There's always so much Battle of Gettysburg, Antietam, Sharpsburg. All these things. So it's always fun to kind of find those nuggets, go on those rabbit holes that I think a lot of people just don't study. Yep. And the Amish thing is a tough one to study. There's not a lot. But
no, there's that one book that we found.
Right. But there's not, I mean, it's really one of those untapped type of aspects of the Civil War. Because again, it's a war of people, and you have different parts of people in this country. You still do. And how it was, especially the Confederate government. And when we did the episode of the burning of the Valley with Sheridan. And that was a big issue because we talked a lot about the farms getting burned. A lot of the farms Sheridan burned were Amish farms and Mennonite farms. And some people, and they had to deal with it. You just had to take it. So we'll talk about it. It'll be cool.
Yeah. And the next episode we're going to do after that is McPherson, James B. McPherson. We're going to do an episode about his life because it was the anniversary of his death just passed. And then, today you have General Howard taking over McPherson's old command of Army of the Tennessee, and he'll be in that command until the end of the Civil War.
Yeah. No, he's interesting because he's a guy we talked a lot about how he could have been president, and he got killed right after Peachtree, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I mean, the Atlanta Bat, I know a lot of people here in the East don't study Atlanta, but they should.
Hmm.
But you'll find a lot of these stories in how that whole thing just went off the spout quickly.
Yeah.
And Sherman did a good job. He did. We're bobbing and weaving. Didn't want to fight directly. And
No.
Joseph E. Johnson, I think, did a fantastic job of slowing him down
Oh
because
yeah.
he knew he couldn't beat him.
Well, he was so excited when he found out Hood was in charge. And then I found that great letter from Howard that he wrote to his wife, and he's like, Hood is a stupid fellow.
Yeah, it's the only time I've ever heard, and it's pretty funny because someone told me Howard didn't have a sense of humor.
Yeah. Meanwhile, he's saying to his wife, oh, he's a stupid fellow.
Yeah, I don't know what that's all about, but I don't know. I don't know, but I think I think it's a lot of these campaigns they all kind of dovetail into each other anyway. But it's fun to talk about it and it's fun to study it because, like we said before, when we did John's tour yesterday, and what's good about him, and it's a lot about the Rangers in this battlefield, and Tatum, the other people I know, Matt down at Monakas, he's great at this.
Yeah.
They talk about the people, the individuals. They all have stories to tell, and they instead of talking about flank maneuvers and file closers and blah blah blah. Um, you you talk about the people,
Yeah.
but other things you can take tours with people like we did the Irish Brigade a few weeks ago, and they talk
Yeah.
heavily about logistics, about companies A and B are always in the middle,
That was a really
and
good
so
one.
so you get different aspects when if you live near one of these Civil War battlefields, or if you visit them, and I know obviously people on this that's preaching to the choir here, take advantage of the Ranger tours and nothing against the guys, they're great too, but the Ranger tours, they're free.
Yeah.
And so most of these parks have really, actually, all the parks have really, really good interpretive rangers.
Yeah. And I think next Saturday is the last one for the summer, I think, because I'm looking at their website and there's no more past August 2nd. So we're not going to be able to go to it because we are going to be at Grant Hall next Saturday.
That's right.
But
If anybody wants to see Grant Hall, this of course is where the Lincoln conspiracy trial was. They're doing an open house next Saturday, and ours truly are going to be doing the tours from 12 to 2 there next Saturday. So
yeah.
if you're in the area, we posted a link on the social media on the Facebook page. You got to sign up for it. You can't just stumble. It's on a military base, and Susan Leroy and the people we know from the U.S. Army who've helped us do this have been absolute fantastic advocates for us. We did the episode there a year or so ago, but now we're going to help do an interpretive tour of Grant Hall, and it's great because if you haven't been there, it's set up the exact same way. So you walk in and you're looking at almost not exactly the same furniture, but it's a similar period furniture in the same places. You can see where the hangings were, which is a tennis court now, but you can at least see where the area was. You can see where the original burials were, because that's where Henry Wirz was initially buried at one point. John Wilkes Booth was initially buried there as well as the 4 people, the conspiracy people. So, but if you're in the area of Washington, D.C., or if you find yourself down there, go online and click the link. You're just going to put your personal information in. They're going to put a background check in there, so maybe some people on this might not pass the background check.
Sure, it'll be fine.
But then they'll send you basically a day pass, and you pull into Fort McNair, which is right near where the Washington Nationals baseball team plays, and you can go in the it's where the War College is, and you go to Grant Hall, and you go upstairs to the 3rd floor, and you can see the courtroom. And they only open it, I think it's twice a year, right?
No, 4. I think it's 4 times.
Is it 4 times?
Okay. 4 times a year. Yeah.
Because I know it's November too.
We're going to try and get down to do the November one as well.
So it's a place you can only get to on really 4 days a year. And it's such an important part of U.S. history. And it's great because it took a lot for them to save the building. There was a point they were going to tear the building down, but they saved it for history. And it's a great place to visit. And it's free. So if you're in the area, sign up for it and come see us from 12 to 2. We can hang out and we can talk Mary Surratt, the second most infamous Mary I know.
Would that be me?
No, Mary Tyler Moore.
Estella asked, what is the title of the book you found about the Amish?
It's called Mennonites in the Amish in the Civil War. It's by a guy named Lehman Nolt. It's a good read. It's got a lot of information in there specifically about the politics of it. But it's Mennonites in the Amish in the Civil War by a guy named Lehman Nolt, N-O-L-T, I believe is it is. But check it out. It's one that's kind of tough to find. We had to go to the library and get this one transferred to us from God knows where.
We got it through interlibrary loan from Adams County Library here in Gettysburg. Interlibrary loan's amazing. you're ever
Yeah.
looking for a book and your local library doesn't have it, make sure, like, just check to see if they have interlibrary loan. Because if they
Yeah.
do, they'll probably be able to get you the book. And it shouldn't cost anything at all.
No, unless you don't return it, then it's $1 a day.
Oh, yeah.
That's like the mafia, Mary.
Yeah. Well, that's because like they're getting it from different libraries.
Yeah, it would have been nice if this one could have fallen off the truck, but not for $1 a day.
No, no.
If it was like $20, I would have said, screw it, I lost the book. Here's $20. Because the book's hard to find.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I could find it. I mean, I remember looking on Amazon. I don't think I saw it on Amazon. I think it was one of those deals, Yeah, that's good. That's good.
No, but that'll be good to do that episode. And then like obviously McPherson, and then we'll probably try and look at some battle episodes as well. No, James mentions Funko Mary.
Right here. Watching over me, judging me, being mean to me, yelling at me.
Being mean, yelling at you.
Yeah, it's all good.
Bill said that sounds cool. I'd have to pay you guys and Dave Taylor to conduct an escape route tour. That would be black.
Oh yeah, I've done the tour. The escape tour is a fun one. Dave's our friend Dave. He's can't say enough about him. He lives in Granbury, Texas now. He used to live in Maryland and he used to do the tours.
Mm-hmm.
And the tour is great, but that's one I've done too. We should do one of those. We should do it. We should conduct one of those sometime. I could do that.
I know. You should talk to them at the Surratt House.
I'll talk to Kevin, see if he wants to do it. I'm sure he'd be thrilled to have me do it.
Kevin.
No, but it's great though, because when you do the Surratt tour, and anybody can do it. You don't need to pay for someone to do it, but you start at the Surratt Tavern in Clinton, Maryland, and the Mud House is right around the corner. You go through the Zakiah Swamp, you go through the Pine Thicket, you cross the bridge, and it sits. The only downside is that some of the areas are not accessible right now. Most of the Pine Thicket's gone. It's a neighborhood, but there are still some places you can go. I remember I went down there a couple of years ago and I took a picture with the newspaper with my booth hat on. Remember that?
Yep.
And the Garrett Farm is, unfortunately, it's inaccessible right now legally. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's on Fort AP Hill, ironically, and you have to know where you're going because there's a sign. Speaking of Dave Taylor, he wrote the sign. So if you see that Assassin's End sign, our friend Dave wrote that. But that's actually across the street. So if you want to find the actual Garrett Farm, you cross the street, walk up about 1,000 yards on your left-hand side, and you cut through the woods and you follow a path, and you can find there's a pipe that sticks out of the ground that used to be where the fireplace was. It's still the same pipe. But the problem is the property is the median of a highway. So they don't really want you out there. But if you happen to find yourself out there, just understand that you're not supposed to. They used to have a sign that said no relic hunting. Okay, I'm not going to relic hunt. But now it says no trespassing in the United States military. So take your chances. But if you get caught, it wasn't us. Blame Dave Taylor. Tell him Dave sent you.
Dave Taylor.
Tell him Taylor sent you. Freaking Dave. Anyway, but but the tour is cool though. Dave, he was going to spend all that time, the 10 days in the Pine Thicket and live boots. He lasted 2 days.
That's it.
He got us scared because of a storm.
He got us scared.
So he made his ex-wife come pick him up and take him home.
Oh, so Bill Etzcorn's on here. He mentions that he said Darren, Mayor, Bill, and Cindy at a military base. That they're coming to see us next weekend too.
That'd be cool to see them. That'd be fun. And that's a busy weekend too, because we're going to do we're going to be heading down to Fredericksburg.
Afterwards. Yep.
There's going to be an emerging Civil War symposium thing. We're going to be swinging down to right after the booth thing.
Yeah.
The thing. And then we're going to maybe do some battlefield on Sunday. So we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we're not going to the symposium, but friends of ours are going to be there. So
our friend Darren, the other Darren.
Yep, from England.
Our friend Makowski is going to be there. So we're definitely going to find some beers afterwards and hang out with them. But that's the plan for after on Saturday. So we got some stuff cooking.
No, be good. And then I think Saturday we're going to go see Chancellorsville.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
I want to go back to where all the shit happened to the 11th Corps.
Oh, your happy place.
Yep.
You dress in black?
No.
You know, wear your sneakers?
Yeah. Jeez, so stupid. Wear my Howard shirt there.
I'm sure you will with your Howard hat and your Howard shirt.
Yeah.
That's nothing wrong with that. It's good.
No, I mean,
everyone
I
needs
just
to have the people that they study. I mean, I'm the same way with different people. I just don't, I like my people. I
It's
like
been
that.
interesting, like kind of being able to like, I'm forcing myself to do more research now that I have this Howard page on Facebook as well as on Instagram. And it's been interesting because finding these letters, I'm trying to find instances where he's funny, but also like, maybe new stuff that people don't know about him. Like I found a letter that he wrote on July 29th that I'm going to talk about in a post on the 29th about how he's talking about going, possibly going to the second course. Schurz might be going in the Shenandoah Valley to, kind of the role that Sheridan had, and just how
Mhm.
quickly things change that all of a sudden, less than a month later, Howard and his guys they're heading south to Bridgeport, Alabama, because they need to support Rosecrans's army out
Yes.
there.
Yeah, no, that is, yeah. I mean, he's, and I think a lot, like we said before, most people, people like the 11th Corps, people, the 12th Corps, Slocum, Howard, those guys, they tend to think their existence ended on July 3rd,
Yeah.
1863, and that's kind of fun about the history, about talking more about it. Yeah, everyone's got their favorites. Everyone has their good people to go to,
Yeah. Caleb mentions that eventually he wants us to come visit him in the Mobile, Alabama area and do some Civil War nerding. Mobile Bay, Fort Gaines, all that, Fort Blakely.
I like it. Is Fort Monroe still there, or did that finally collapse? Caleb,
Or
did
was it
Caleb
Fort Morgan?
Morgan? Did Caleb say he's moving to Alabama?
He's moving back south again, I think.
Oh wow, okay. Good for him. We'll hope that works out well. Yes, Fort Morgan. I know that was on death's door as far as about to collapse in Mobile, Alabama. So I'd love to go to Alabama. I
I
fit
would
right
too.
in.
I've been to Alabama before.
I've never been to Alabama, but
I have.
it was close. We were close that one time. Remember, we were in
Mhm.
Chickamauga, and we were right on the border. No,
My
that's cool.
brother was obsessed with World War II warships for a while. So when we drove down to Florida one time, I would have been like 14 or 15. We had to stop in Mobile to see one of the warships. I can't remember what the heck it was called, but my brother liked it. I was like, just where's the Civil War history? We didn't see much of it though. Oh, Braxton Bragg is buried in Mobile.
Mhm.
Oh, I'd love to go to Selma. That's what Caleb just said.
No, that'd be cool. You know what, Caleb? We'll take you up on that. We'll definitely head down this. Truth be told, Alabama is one of the states I've never been to. I've always wanted to go to Alabama, so I never thought I'd say that today, but that's here we
It
are.
just sucks that
But
the day we were in Chickamauga and we were like, it was raining and we had talked about going to get a beer in Alabama, but we were completely soaked from
yeah,
all the
no,
rain.
no, but it's good though. I mean, I'd love to go to Mobile, and there's obviously a lot of good history there. Let's go to Pike County, go see where William C. Oates' hometown was.
Mhm.
I know that's probably not close to there, but in my mind, everything's right there. But it's not. I know that's not the case. See, around my state, Mary, is such a small state. Everywhere is around the corner.
Yeah.
The states like Alabama are pretty big, right?
Yeah, it was, I remember like getting to the state line from whatever state we crossed into, like Georgia or whatever, and then it just taking forever to get to Mobile.
Mhm. Yeah, well, we'll definitely do that. We'll definitely do that. I assume they have electricity and stuff down there. To find out for
I
sure. I
think
don't
they
know.
do. It's
Do they?
actually a pretty
Okay.
cool place to visit.
No, but that's cool. That's pretty. No, we'll keep that in mind. Absolutely.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's a lot of good history, and I think getting people out of the mindset of look, I love Gettysburg. Don't get me wrong. We live here for a reason, but at the same point, I think there are people who think that Gettysburg is the only thing, is
Yeah.
the only thing to study, and I think if you're doing that, you're missing the boat, literally and figuratively when you're coming to Mobile, right?
Yeah. Well, you're missing so much other history. Like, I mean, you have these people like that guy yesterday that was saying, like, oh, 11th Corps always retreating. It's like,
That's an idiot.
like, where did you get that? Like, they retreated once before
Yeah.
Chancellorsville. That was it. And like
Yeah.
in Gettysburg, they had no choice.
Mhm.
Like, you study the first day, both the 11th and the First Corps have to retreat. That's why
Mhm.
the 16th Maine stays back. But like, it doesn't, like their history, the 11th Corps history, same with the 12th Corps history, does not stop at
No,
July the 3rd.
right, and the more you visit these places, the more you realize that, and you find out more of these histories, these stories of these people, and it's just it's such a great. You can go to these Civil War states, every one of them, and you could find real good history.
Mhm.
Even Mass, right? There's a lot of
Oh, yeah.
Civil War up there, but you have to know where to look for it in some places. But no, Mobile, we're going to take Caleb up on that. That's good. That's
Yeah.
good.
We were talking yesterday, we watched a TV show yesterday, which was about Fort Morgan. And we were like, we should do an
Yeah.
episode on this.
Yeah, that there's a lot. There's a lot of. I mean, we haven't done one on Mobile either, and that once Mobile fell, that left Fort Fisher as kind of the last game in town, which is why the Maritimes in Canada goes back to the
Yeah.
Canadas, right? That's how why that's all important because it brings it all back again, and you see that and literally any port in a storm applies
Yeah.
with the Confederates and the supplies, and it's no surprise that when Fort Fisher fell, Mobile's gone, New Orleans is obviously long gone. Fort Fisher falls. It's the clock's counting on Lee's surrender
Hmm.
because of supplies, and it's all about the
Yeah.
supplies. I mean, it's like being a Confederate soldier is like being a coyote. Every
Yeah.
day is the search for food.
Yeah.
That's your existence, and so that's when you cut the supplies out. Um, that's how you get the army, and that's
Yeah.
why Sherman was good though, because he knew like why not to go take care of the Augusta Iron Works,
Yeah.
cut the supply routes, starve them out, and that's why the Shenandoah Valley, although the burning is no picnic, or to study it because it's really cruel in a lot of different aspects, and we'll talk about that when we do the Amish thing too. Was when you're doing that, and you're cutting the supplies out, you're starving the army out. That's you're you don't have to beat them by means. You can beat them
No.
by will, which is what the Confederates tried to do for 4 years.
That's why I didn't agree with that one presentation we went to where the guy was like saying Sherman made a huge error in not destroying the Augusta Ironworks. It's like, why would you bother?
No, that would be unnecessary death. So there's no point of that. And you can see, especially as it got sort of late in the war, it kind of turned into they definitely took need the need the football on different points. You
Yeah.
saw that a lot in Bentonville with Sherman, right? But obviously his goal was to get to Savannah as fast as he possibly could. It could have been a lot worse. It's not as bad as Margaret Mitchell makes it sound, unfortunately.
No.
That's historical memory for you.
Did you know on August 31st, there was a skirmish near Rough and Ready?
It's too bad Rough and really doesn't exist anymore because we went down there.
Yeah.
We went to go it's not far from the Jonesboro area. We were down there for the Claiborne's battle after the Atlantic
Yeah,
campaign.
Jonesboro. Yeah.
And there really isn't much anymore because that'd be a cool beer glass, like a Rough and Ready tavern.
Rough and Ready. That would be amazing.
That'd be pretty cool. Places are gone, fortunately.
The Rough and Ready cheerleaders.
Mm-hmm.
People are just talking here about Calvin says, not sure how much history is in Decatur, Alabama from Hood's fighting there, but I had a grandfather serve there and would love to head there.
Yeah.
And then Frank just said that they were in that area before Hood's campaign of Tennessee in 64, so before the dreaded Franklin campaign.
I mean, there are some places that are better preserved, obviously, than others. There's some places, like when we mentioned the Booth tour a little while ago, you can pretty much see the same thing that Booth and Davy Harrell would have seen, especially when you're going down past the mud farm, going to the swamp. It's exactly this. Nothing's changed. It's not rebuilt or nothing. It's just wasteland.
It's the same with like if you're in the Atlanta area, you can do so much between Chattanooga and Atlanta. You can trace that whole route that Sherman went on because there's battles at every exit. Like you have Jonesboro, Kennesaw, Pickett's Mill, Resaca, Peachtree Creek, Ezra Church. Although Ezra Church is more in it's now a suburb of Atlanta. There's not much left. It's in a park, but you can still kind of get an idea what's going on. Here's a question, and we were just talking about how to get out of Gettysburg, but Brooklyn asked, does Jeb Stuart get too much blame for Gettysburg? Yes.
Jeb Stuart, gets so much unnecessary blame. It's embarrassing. And that is because of the movie and the book. Okay.
Yeah.
Now here's the thing, okay. And we got going about this. And a lot of this comes from John Mosby directly, the Cavalier, not the cat. Okay. Yeah. Is the movie, the scene where you see Robert E. Lee and you see Jeb Stuart, you must learn from this, as a man does.
The verse like, I'm not angry, Jeb, right. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, that never happened. That was put in as hyperbole. And a lot of it it comes from the beginning part of the first day of Gettysburg when you have Ewell coming in from the north, you've got Early coming in from the east, and Lee doesn't want to attack and bring on a general engagement, okay? And that's because he doesn't know what's in front of him. And people take that to mean, well, Jeb's gone, okay? Now, yes, Jeb was not there. He was getting supplies as he was supposed to do.
Yeah, 100 wagons.
Right, but you still had a substantial cavalry force in Gettysburg at the time, so you had eyes and ears. The problem was when Jeb took his men, he liked certain guys and he didn't like others. So he did not like Grumble Jones. He did
Jeb was
not,
a bit of a
right,
diva.
right. He did not like, he hated Albert Jenkins. He did not like Grumble Jones, right? So what does he do? He leaves them with Lee. And he ends up taking guys like John Chambliss with him, guys like Fitzhugh Lee with him, the guys he trusted. He took his better guys.
Mhm.
So when you're looking at watching the army of the of the Potomac, they were supposed to watch the gaps. They really didn't. So they did get pantsed. And so the scene with Harrison the spy, that's all true. But the problem is here in Gettysburg, they did have eyes. Lee just was again, Lee was a little more cautious because he wanted his whole army together before he fought.
Yeah.
Not so much because he had a good idea what Meade or Hooker / Meade had.
Yeah.
But the problem was he didn't know where they were when more so the biggest issue with Lee, his army is spread over a 55-mile radius.
Yeah.
West, north, and east of Gettysburg. He didn't want to fight till they were all together. When they got together and he blew the conch shell and had them all come in, that's when he wanted to fight. Jeb was not going to make a difference at all. So when Jeb does come here, he does provide service, obviously, the 3rd of July over East Cavalry Field. He certainly does. But he's completely blamed over. And when you see people talk about Jeb being late, and you see all these things, it's really unfair. It really, really is.
Yeah.
Jeb is a guy who fought for the infantry, okay, at Chancellorsville. He was instrumental at Antietam from keeping Lee from getting his ass handed to him in Nicodemus Heights in the West Wood. That's all Jeb, right? Jeb's the one who told Lee, we cannot go around the north to Poffenberger Farm and attack the Union. We will get our asses kicked. And Lee acquiesced to that, which is why the battle spilled down the Middle Bridge and that whole area.
Yeah.
But Jeb gets an absolute, really unfair treatment because of what happened here because of Michael Schara. And that's just the truth.
Yeah.
Now,
and it's not
people can
getting angry at him for it, but I mean
people can disagree with it. That's totally cool.
Yeah.
But when you look at people like John Mosby, who spent his later years defending Jeb Stuart. Now again, Mosby, I mean, he loved Jeb the way you love Labatt's. I mean, let's be honest, okay? He did. But at the end of the day, when you look at the record, when Jeb Stuart's job was to get supplies, he did leave cavalry back to watch the gaps, to inform Lee of any Union movement. The problem was the people he left behind, Jenkins and Grumble Jones, they didn't do their jobs, unfortunately. No. But the movie is a cringe scene when he does that.
Yeah.
Not just because of the beard, the big fake beard, Mary.
Oh God.
Because it's not historically accurate. It's not.
Yeah.
Robert E. Lee never, ever, ever bashed Jeb Stuart for Gettysburg. Never. And you would think that if it's such a big instrumental thing, he might have said something, because he bashed a lot of people. He didn't bash Lee. He bashed Stuart.
No. Denver says, speaking of unnecessary blame for Gettysburg, Longstreet has entered the chat.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Denver, by the way. She was in town here not too long ago.
She was. Yep.
Oh, yeah. We've come so close.
I know. I was like, we kept missing her at different places.
Yeah. But Longstreet's an interesting study on the South, though, because you want to talk about the heat of battle, and it's like one of those deals. It's like, well, we're supposed to do this. Our game plan is we're going to run this thing defensively, and all of a sudden everything flips. And Longstreet, we could do a whole thing on just the Longstreet thing, but when you look at his countermarch, he's under the impression, for whatever reason, that McLaws, who's in the lead, is reporting directly to Lee now. And so Longstreet did kind of take his ball and go home. And I know our friends like Corey Farr disagree with that. But when you're starting to look at some of the real effort, the real conversations that took place in real time by some of the subordinates, it turned into, especially after the war, right? Guys like Marshall, guys like Walter Taylor, Robert E. Lee cannot be blamed for this. So who are we going to blame? We're going to blame Longstreet, because he screwed up the countermarch and he took his ball and went home.
And he's also, at the time they were blaming him, which is post-war, he has become, term as a scallywag. He's kind of gone to the North and said, we need to reconcile. And he was not liked for that at all. So they needed someone to blame, and they unfortunately picked him.
So you're going to grab the low-hanging fruit. Okay, you're going to grab Jeb and you're going to grab Longstreet. Now, Longstreet did not cover himself in glory here either. He just didn't. And there are certain things that why he wanted to wait for Evander Law to come from Guilford. And I know it's a whole brigade. He wants as many guys as possible.
Yeah.
But why he's going to delay the entire battle of July 2nd for Lee, I mean for Law. But again, Lee, by all accounts, agrees to it. And so now they're sitting around diddling by the butt farm. There's a visual for you, right? Waiting for Law to get there. He finally shows up, a forced march, 12 miles away. And now they go right into battle. Now they have to counter march.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you go to Breams Hill, we did a Facebook Live not too long ago. I found the path, we found it.
Yep.
Why he did a full counter march is beyond comprehension. When he would have seen the wheel tracks from poor E.P. Alexander's his artillery,
Yep.
because it would have been raining before, he could have followed those tracks, but he went all the way back around again. I don't know, but I mean, the thing about it, though, when you start to study these things, it's easy to look back with a 163-year kaleidoscope. Is that what that thing is?
Yep.
Is that what that is? Oh, no, a telescope. The kaleidoscope makes all little.
Yeah, it has all the designs in it.
Yeah. But that's what it is. You could look back and pick and choose. But a lot of the post Gettysburg stuff was finding a way to absolve Lee of failure. Now, Lee originally said, "Oh, it's all my fault. I pray to you now. It's all my fault."
Yeah.
But he changed his tune soon after that.
Yeah.
Then it turned into, "Oh, I don't think it's all my fault."
Yeah. I think it's someone else's fault.
Just, not it, right?
Yeah.
But again, that's the whole thing. But the movie Gettysburg and the book Killer Angels is the best and worst thing that's ever happened to Gettysburg. We said this a million times because it puts a false narrative of blame on certain things, inflates people. Like you, especially, who, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Old Winnie Boy.
Oh yeah,
it makes him look like Superman when he really wasn't. But at the same time, I get it. You're going to have the connection between Hancock and Louis Armistead, and so you have to play that narrative out. But people think that's historical facts.
Well, the problem is like there's so many movie memes out there, and people keep posting them, and a lot of people know that a lot of the movie is myth. It's not true, but there are people that still take it. They're just getting into studying it, so they take it for fact.
Right.
So they think these memes are, what actually happened. And yeah, the memes are funny, but sometimes it's like, okay, like, like Gary Edelman had a really good post the other day. It was like, what are your like myths of the Civil War that you hate? I didn't answer it, but the first thing that came to mind was Hancock and Gettysburg. Just how he gets so like overinflated. And you have men like Howard and even Slocum and Webb that don't get that credit. Like the words that Hancock speaks in the movie are the words that Oliver Otis Howard spoke. And I've had people come back at me. They're like, that's not true. I'm like, yes, it is. That's what happened is they took the words from Howard and they gave them to Hancock.
Well, there's a look. Gettysburg is a bromance set behind a war drop. That's what that is, and that's fine, because it gets a lot of people into that specific battle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as an Antietam guy, I wish they'd make one about Antietam. I don't know who the hell you're going to have as your bromance. Everyone hates each other.
You don't even need one anymore. Like you don't even need anyone anymore or one anymore. But it's it just gets tiring after a while, especially around the anniversary. That I know like. And I tend not to participate in much of social media anymore with that because it's like it's an uphill battle. Like you can't like convince people that believe something that they're like, oh no, this is the way it happened, blah blah blah.
Well, don't forget too, though, we're not dealing with math here. This is not good Mary hunting, okay?
No,
I mean history is about interpretation. So they're really, to call a spade here, it's there's no right or wrong. It's all interpretation. If someone thinks that Chamberlain is the greatest thing since canned beer, that's fine because you can build a case for that on certain things. But the problem is when you start to do that, you tunnel vision, right? Mm-hmm. And you begin to only see and hear what you want to see. We know people who are that way with a lot of. We know someone specific who's that way with Hancock, right? Who they could do no wrong, and you're going to fabricate stuff to push a narrative.
Yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that you tune yourself out when you do that. Chamberlain gets a lot of credit for here. He does, and it's deserved in a lot of different cases. But the problem with the historical memory, and we see it all the time when we walk around here, is people think that's the only thing that happened.
Yeah,
that Round Top falls. The Union collapses. We're all drinking sweet tea, watching NASCAR, right? Yeah. That's what the movie and the book will have you think. in reality, you play this out. William C. Oates is 15th. Alabama gets up there. Let's just and they collapse round trip. Round the Confederates, they turn Weed's guns, they get the guns, play this whole thing. Okay. 6th Corps is going to push them off about 10 minutes. This Union supply line on Town Road is right behind them. Okay. So the Union was not going to let them hold that. So it would have been an important gain. And what Joshua Chamberlain did on July 2nd is a must-have at that moment in time. But it completely dismisses Colville's 1st Minnesota, Ireland's 137 New York, Julian Weir's cavalry, the 19th Maine. It takes all those but again, you're not going to have a 10-hour movie here. This isn't,
you could have made it into a mini series, but still they have to condense it.
But and again, most people don't study this like people on this chat do.
No,
most people study it. They see the movie. They come see the movie. The video here, the visitor center. Maybe they take a battlefield tour with a guide or a ranger. That's the end of it. No one. I mean, we're freaks of nature with this stuff. Anybody who's on this, you're not normal. You're not.
But that's okay.
Right, but that's okay. Just understand that's a good thing. But you can't expect people to, to sit there and go, well, something. I saw the movie, but I'll tell you that Dave Ireland's pretty good. 137 New York. I think no one knows who he is unless you study the war, and that's okay. There's people going to study what they want. People actually have lives outside of stuff.
Exactly.
Allegedly, that's a thing.
Yeah. Denver asked what quote was from Howard that they gave to Hancock. She didn't know that. It's in paraphrasing, this is very good ground. So that scene in the movie where Meade shows up and he goes into that
very, very,
very good ground.
That's creepy a little bit.
Yeah, it's weird.
That sounds like breathe into this rag.
That does actually. Yeah. Anyway, so the scene in the movie where Meade shows up and he goes into the headquarters where all the generals are talking. Howard's actually in that scene. He's talking to Hancock in it. But Hancock is the one that has the conversation with Meade about it being good ground. It's great to fight at, all that. That is the conversation that Howard has with Meade. And it happens over at the cemetery gatehouse. Hancock was not in town at that point. He left when Slocum came down. Slocum became, I think, the commander on the field when he came down because he's the highest ranking officer in the Army of the Potomac. When Meade shows up, very late July 1st or very early July 2nd, depending on the sources you read, he meets with Howard, Slocum, and Sickles. And he says, is this good ground? And Howard says, it is very good ground. And so that's the conversation they have. And it's outside the cemetery gatehouse where Howard and Slocum and Sickles, they have dinner that night served to them by Elizabeth Thorne, who's the cemetery caretaker at the time because her husband is off fighting in the war. But that's just one of the things, like they condense that into giving Hancock that role because that's how the story plays out. So that whole thing, like that's one scene that is completely fabricated, and I get it, it's the movie, but I've talked to people about it and they're like, no, it was Hancock he spoke to. I'm like, no, it wasn't. He did not speak.
Yeah, a lot of that scene when Meade shows up, I mean, Meade is the commanding general of the Union Army at Gettysburg, right? He has 2 lines in the whole movie.
Yeah.
I mean, so again, the focus wasn't really on just the actual battle. It was about the personal stories. And that's exactly what Michael Shara wanted to capture.
Yeah, that's what he wanted to do. He picked Chamberlain as a character because he was a professor and he saw he strived to be Chamberlain as a person, I think. So that's why he picked him. He was one of his heroes.
Michael Shara was, people think of him as this military type of historian writer. He's not, though. He's the guy who wrote the book that turned into the Kevin Costner Perfect Game Detroit Tiger movie.
Yeah.
Well, I forget the name of it now.
Love of the Game.
Love of the Game. And that movie was Gettysburg on a baseball field. It wasn't about a no-hitter. It was about a man with his personal issues in relationships set in the background of a baseball game. So it runs the same course out with him. He's not Scott Hartwig here. He's not Alan Gelzo. He's not. But again, it gets people into it. But again, we know people who are a little bit too into it. But that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, each to their own with it. I mean, I love the movie. I just like
one of my favorite movies, but take it for what it is. I mean, Star Wars is a great movie, but our NASA friends don't think it's very accurate, but they still enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's okay.
Yeah. And I enjoy like the other book. Like I really liked Jeff Shar's book, The Smoke at Dawn about Chattanooga, because that has Claiborne in a character. And that
Mhm.
was a great perspective to have. It was a good telling of what happens. Again, it's historical fiction, but it's a great telling of what happens post Chickamauga right through to the battles of Missionary Ridge.
Mhm.
And you have like Chamberlain as a character and Braxton Bragg. They contrast each other very much. You know, Sherman and Grant, and then the soldier Bauer. Um, it's a really good read. I really enjoyed that book. And again, historical fiction. Brooklyn says Dan Sickles, a fellow New Yorker. American Scoundrels, an excellent book.
Yeah, yeah, and Sickles again. He's another one, and um, but the more you read these more personal stories, you realize it's more than just the red lines versus the blue lines. And
Mhm.
this is, and I know we're doing a lot of Gettysburg now, but you can make this case for any of these battles. You can
Well,
talk.
there's so many myths that come out of all the battles, that happen. There's the whole thing with with Howard taking command of the Army of the Tennessee today. There are people that downplay that say he only got command because he was West Pointer. There was
I
a
think
lot
I
of
think the biggest problem I have with this, and this is the people who don't like Sickles, is they have this concept of the misconception he violated orders, which he didn't. Also, that he was dumb. If anyone's ever spent a time reading anything by Dan Sickles, the dude is a genius. I mean, the guy
Mhm.
can write. He's very vivid. People talk a lot about Chamberlain, about how his passing of the Army's book makes your head hurt. But read Sickles sometime. The guy was a genius. He just was. He interpreted Meade's directions the way he wanted to interpret them.
Yeah,
You know, and so that's the whole thing about that. And now history shows, well, but last I checked, the Union won the battle.
yeah,
So I again, there's a lot of people have issues with certain people, and that not that's fine. But I mean, again, when you look at some of the contemporaries, what they said, people didn't like Sickles because of who he was. I mean,
yeah,
he's not the most moral guy in the world. He was a politician, ran his mouth. He was bombastic. You know, he was the whole thing with Francis Scott Keys, Barton
yeah,
Keys thing.
yeah,
Uh, so people didn't like him personally. He was out of the 7 corps here at Gettysburg, he was the only corps commander who was not West Point,
yeah,
right? So every single one of them, of course, you're going to look at a guy like that, and you're not going to have big favorable opinions.
yeah.
Now you move yourself out, you get your corps wrecked. Well, of course he did, because he's not a West Point guy, and he likes to go to the bang barn as much as he possibly can. And so he's an easy target.
Yeah,
But the problem is, historically going forward, he doesn't do a lot to help himself. I mean, he doubles
no.
down on a lot. I mean, he steals all that money from the
Oh yeah,
Battlefield Association, ends up hooking up with the Queen of Spain. Okay.
yeah,
But so he doesn't do himself any favors, but you can't dismiss his military record. Just like you can overlook people like Abner Doubleday here, who had a great day at Gettysburg, and no one studies him. By all accounts, he's supposed to take over for the First Corps,
yeah,
but he gets passed over by John Newton for political reasons too. And
yeah.
Doubleday never forgave him for that.
No, and that what Doubleday was to do with Doubleday was an abolitionist at a time when it was not cool to be an abolitionist. Same with Howard. That's sometimes why
Mm-hmm.
Howard got the treatment he did. He's an abolitionist in an army that it's not fully accepted. Meade and Reynolds are not abolitionists. Hancock's not. Um, so you're kind of going against what people, the majority opinion at that point. But the whole thing with like, should Blackjack Logan have taken over Army of the Tennessee? No, I don't think so. He was not. I mean, Blackjack Logan is great, but he is not the one that Sherman needs commanding that army. He needs a guy that is going to follow orders,
Mm-hmm.
that is going to be calm and cool. And I know some people will come back and me say Howard's not that way, but you read what his men wrote about him, and
The thing
he
about
is,
Howard, when he lost his mind, he would do it privately.
yeah.
He would go to the gatehouse and he'd go in the kitchen over here,
Or
or
he'd scream into a pillow.
and he'd flip. Oh yeah, that's who he was. He was like Cameron Fry in Ferris
Yes,
Bueller
that's
in the
exactly who he
car.
is.
Ah!
Yeah, that's exactly.
Versus other people like Hancock, for example, who would lose their mind publicly. He was Kevin Bacon in Animal House. All is well. Then he started losing his mind. That was Hancock. Oh, and there's no shame in either one of them, because you're dealing with a really unprecedented amount of stress.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. You're dealing with volunteers, okay? Volunteers. Do you know, December 31st, 1860, here's a trivia question for you, Mary. How many regiments were in the United States Army in December 31st, 1860?
No idea.
How about this? Plus or minus 100, greater or less? Was it more than 100 or less than 100?
Less than 100.
There was 10 regiments in the entire U.S. Army, 8,600 soldiers in the entire U.S. Army on New Year's Day of 1861. So what does that tell you? You're bringing these volunteers in the Civil War. There's a huge learning curve, which is why McClellan doesn't get enough credit. And we've talked about this. He put a volunteer army together, and you had the U.S. regulars who trained certain ways, volunteers who trained certain ways.
Yeah.
The regulars looked down on the volunteers because they thought they weren't being trained well. When you think about how far that Union Army came, and not to mention 8,600 soldiers spread over the entire country. All right, now it's not the same country now, but you had Los Angeles, you had the East Coast, you had Minnesota, Florida, that area. You had an army like that. We're making fun of Canada earlier about the 6 hours or 6 days of training.
Yeah.
You're not talking about the United States Army that we knew a year later.
Yeah.
You don't even have enough for a full regiment. You need 10,000 men for a full registry, right? You're talking 100-man companies. You're talking 1,000-man regiments. 10 regiments should have 10,000 people, right?
Yeah.
You're talking 8,600. That's how it was. So they've come a long way, baby.
Yep. Well,
right?
yeah, and that's the thing. It's so, and to think that they weren't trying, well, I guess they're probably like, no, there's not going to be a civil war. If there is, it'll be short-lived kind of thing. But yeah, you have all these men coming in that they don't know what they're doing. Well, I shouldn't say they don't know what they're doing. Like they have to be trained for it. And then you have like the political generals like Dan Sickles, like Black Jack Logan as well, that are getting their positions from the government. But, it turns out that, Dan Sickles isn't that bad. I like him. Black Jack Logan is especially, he's a good general, but he's just not what Sherman needs to be in charge of Army of the Tennessee. He needed Howard, and he said that. He's like, this is not just about you going to West Point. This is about you already knowing about the paperwork and about being able to keep your men, like, be that kind of stoic guy, I guess, to lead men. And he also knows that he can leave Howard, and Howard is able to think for himself and make the decisions that need to be made. And yeah, he doesn't have a great day at Pickett's Mill, but a few days after he takes command of Army of the Tennessee, he's going to be at the Battle of Regis Church, and that his first battle as an army commander, he wins. And some people have come back and say like, oh, he's only going against Stephen D. Lee, so it wasn't that much of a fight. It's like, that's not fair to say about him either.
Stephen D. Lee was I mean, he cut his teeth as an artillerist, right? Yeah. He was probably better suited. He was one of those guys who, I mean, when you're talking about the Confederate States of America, you're talking about guys who multitasked. Yeah. Right. You're talking S.D. Lee, for example. He's running an artillery battalion at Gettysburg in Antietam, and then 2 hours later, he's running infantry.
Yeah.
Jeb Stuart, obviously cavalry. He's running infantry at Chancellorsville when Stonewall goes down. So again, you're talking strengths and weaknesses of these people. But when you're talking about the original army, and not a lot of them were run by West Point guys. I think there was 6 regiments that's it run by West Points. And the thing we got to remember too, West Point was an engineering school.
Yeah.
In the 1850s and 60s. That's why if you graduated first or second, you were an engineer. It wasn't this military thing it is now. And you didn't study Clausewitz. It wasn't translated to English till after the Civil War. So you're talking Dennis Mahan, people like that, mostly fort building. West Point was a school basically who taught you how to build forts and fortifications as an engineering school. That's what it was. There was no Army-Navy game back then.
No, and that's why someone like me.
Imagine that. Barrett getting lined up against Grant.
That'd be amazing.
but for real, we sometimes we fall in the trap of looking at that aspect the way we do now. That all the best and brightest military minds went to West Point because they wanted to do soldiering. That's not necessarily the case. They wanted to be engineers.
Meade ends up working on lighthouses after, like leading into the Civil War, and he does a survey of the Great Lakes. He surveyed Lake Huron, the American side. Which is interesting.
They built lighthouses in Florida too.
Yep. up and down the East Coast. Meade built a lot of lighthouses and he surveyed the Great Lakes, completed the survey of Lake Huron on the American side.
Freud would say there's something wrong with that.
Hmm. Jeez.
Just saying.
So bad.
But I digress.
But then you have men like, Sherman and Grant that end up leaving the regular army and they don't have success. And they end up coming back because of the Civil War and they stay in it. They retire from the army. And Howard does the same thing. Howard, before the Civil War, he was going to leave the army and join basically become like, I don't know, priest, not a priest, but a reverend or something like that. And his wife was not having any of that. I'm going to guess it's to do with the pay. But anyway, when the Civil War broke out, Howard felt that his calling from God was to stay in and fight, and that's why he did. But he was ready to leave and become a reverend or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But his wife was not supportive of that. She was like, no, I don't do this.
Yeah, officer pays pretty good.
Yeah, and I think that's why she's like, you want to keep having these kids, you need to make the money.
Yeah, he certainly took advantage of that, didn't he? But that's true though. That's the honest to God truth. Is a lot of these guys, we talk about the Irish, for example. Most of these guys joined because they wanted to get paid. They couldn't get jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So $13 a month, $10, a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
That's how you gotta see it. But yeah, it's a different world back then. It really, really is.
Caleb just said Monk Howard, General Howard. And Frank said John McClernand was one of the most conniving political generals, maybe more than Sickles in some ways. Oh, McClernand was.
When you look at McClernand, how he tried to rope-a-dope Grant in the Vicksburg campaign,
and he took credit for that one battle.
Right, but yeah, exactly. But when you look at how he was trying to Rochambeau Grant,
yeah.
If you study, if the people who don't study the Vicksburg campaign, and some people do, some people don't, if you study Vicksburg, the early part of that, when you look at how he was going behind the scenes to screw Grant because he wanted to take that gig,
yeah,
it's one of the more fascinating aspects. When you study Vicksburg, you study Bruinsburg and Grierson, of course, the bombardment, all that stuff you hear about. But if you look at the early politics, war is politics, right?
Yeah.
And McClernand, he wanted to be at the masthead, right?
Yep.
And when you look at how he tried to screw Grant, yet Grant gets pissed at Rosecrans.
I know.
Like, okay.
Oh, well, wasn't there that one battle where Sherman had clearly won it and he got onto the boat and McClernand was celebrating as if he had won it, and Sherman's like, "This is my battle, dude, not yours."
Yeah. And he tried to claim credit. I think it was Iuka.
Yeah.
He tried to get credit for, and they got pants at Iuka.
Yeah.
I mean, they got astroglided in Iuka, right? And so you end up in a situation, and then it turns into a name, blame game between William Rosecrans and U.S. Grant. Meanwhile, there's McClernand twisting his mustache in the background, political, a lot of the stuff.
And Buell.
Yeah, well, Buell too, but you're right. But McClernand is one of the underrated snakes in the Union Army, the backstabbing type of guys. And again, well, it's a fun name to say.
Yeah, I said the name McClernand one time, and someone who didn't study the Civil War was like, "Is that the Irma Gerd name for McClellan?" I'm like, "No, there was a guy named McClernand."
Yeah.
And then them versus Poor Rosie. We are Team Rosecrans.
Yes. Look, I like Rosecrans. Tullahoma, brilliant. Stones River, a lot of good things he did. Initially, Chattanooga, not so much at Chickamauga, but it is what it is. Boys will be boys. But the thing about it, though, is he did screw himself, though.
Oh yeah, he ran his mouth
Well, speaking of Iuka, you don't go behind the back and go to a reporter in Cincinnati and throw Grant under the bus, and then find out that the writer is Rosecrans' best pal, is BFF, and they're not going to find out about it. So he kind of dug his own grave, but he's very underrated. And I think Grant overshadows him so much, especially once you got midway through Chattanooga and it turned into Grant's deal. Look, I think Grant is, after George Washington, is the greatest general.
Yeah, he is.
He just is, right? But again, Grant knew which way the wind was blowing politically too. He was not he was not naive, and that's one of his strengths. He was able to be a political and a military general,
Yeah.
but he definitely phased Rosecrans out.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely did.
Yeah.
Rosecrans deserves better, but you want to piss the Grant people off? Say Rosecrans won Chattanooga. Get them
Oh,
going, right?
I know some Grant people that they would, oh,
And that's fine. But again, because Grant, I mean, he did though, but a lot of the Cracker Plan, a
Yep.
lot of that stuff was Rosecrans' plan that Grant did implement.
Yep.
But again, you can't dismiss, a lot of the stuff that Thomas did, that Hooker did, Sherman not so much, not a good day.
Yeah,
right?
Sherman does not have a good day at Missionary Ridge.
But again, a lot of that was planned. Grant still had to, you still have to implement it. You still got to run it. You still got to go to Pigeon Hill and try to win this. Go to Missionary Ridge and try to win this. So it's not like Rosecrans did everything and he just walked in and picked up the ball and just ran the last yard in. Grant gets a lot of credit for that, but that plan, don't forget too, Braxton Bragg, who is universally considered completely incompetent, he had a really good plan to basically starve out Chattanooga. Mountains surrounding it. There was no way to get food in. The Union Army was in trouble. He couldn't fire on Chattanooga because it was a southern town, so he had to starve them out. And it was Rosecrans who came up with the Cracker Plan to break through to get supplies through. Mm-hmm. But he gets basically removed before it starts as Grant comes in. He implements it.
Yeah.
And the Grant people don't like to hear that, but you got to kind of split the credit there a little bit.
When you're studying someone, you got to study both sides of it. And there are parts of Grant that are not very good. Like, he's a human. He's not perfect. He can be a mean girl at times. And yeah, we know Grant people who, like, Grant does no wrong. And that's not like, I don't know. I don't like studying historical figures that way because you have to study what they did wrong. Fragile X Factor mentions, but McClernand's troops cleared the way across the river. I wonder what Sherman thought about that.
All right. I'm talking the political side of McClernand. The military side, I mean, yes, he did a lot of good things with that, but I think it's one of those deals where people kind of come in, they want to have their name attached to successes for future things. We saw that a lot with Sheridan.
Yeah.
Against Warren and later on the Appomattox campaign. So it's not that unusual. It's just that when you look at the big picture, when you tend to study the people you like, you get a skewed version of the people that person did not like. Yeah. Right. And that therein lies a challenge. That's why you got to read as much as you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm sure there are people out there who have McClernand as their Facebook profile picture. I'm sure they do. There's somebody out there. Everybody loves somebody. But when they realized, okay, that there's a real good chance the Union's going to win this, and they saw themselves as a victory in a Union Army as a general as the pathway to the White House, you start to see the machinations moving. You saw that a lot with Sheridan. Yeah. Right? And that's why Sherman was very clear about, if nominated I will not run, elected I will not serve. You want to know part of it. But there's a reason why he said that. Because you saw everything politically was going on.
He never wanted any part to do with any political office.
But he didn't just say that in a vacuum.
No.
He said that because he saw everybody else. And I don't mean like the Rutherford B. Hayes, William McKinley's of the world. I mean the top dogs in 1865. Yeah. And it's no surprise Grant was elected. McClellan, he theoretically could have won in 64.
Yeah, well, look at Hancock runs.
But what I'm saying is, McClellan runs on what he perceived as Civil War successes. Yeah, because he thought he did no wrong. I mean, obviously he did in a lot of different ways, but he was a name at the time because of what he did as a general, and he wasn't the only one. There's a lot of guys like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the funny thing I find about Hancock is Hancock's very political, right? I mean, he runs for president and loses. But the funny thing is like after Gettysburg, when Howard gets named as one of the three victors by Congress, Meade, Hooker, and Howard, Hancock writes him a letter and he accuses Howard of politicking. And Howard's like, Howard was not looking to run for president after the war. Like that was
it's about the only thing he didn't run with.
Yes. Jeez.
I'm kidding.
But I know. Ran with everything else. Yeah. But he wasn't, and like you read the response and Howard's just like, I'm not politicking. I can't help that I've been named one of the victors. Like, and it pissed the Hancock people off because Hancock and his people thought that Hancock should have been named one of the victors.
Yeah, Hancock's, his Gettysburg history again. We go back to the movie again, the book again. It's overplayed. He overplays the hand. He gets wounded pretty early at Pickett's charge, and Alexander Webb takes over because Gibbon gets wounded pretty early.
Yeah.
Right. He does a lot of things. He sends Sam Carroll out to Cemetery Hill to bail out Chisanovsky after Von Gilza,
Yeah.
that whole thing.
Von Gilson had a habit of doing
Right,
that.
right. But again, there's so much that's come out since Killer Angels in 1993 when the movie came out to really play up his role. And again, there's no shame in it, but they chose to make him focal factor in it, so they had to roll him into a bigger character that he was because he does live. But he gets wounded at Gettysburg. He's never the same after that. He comes back. He comes back from Petersburg, ends up fighting at the Battle of Ream Station, gets pounded by A.P. Hill in one of the most bigger routes in the Civil War.
Yeah.
He was only a corps commander before Gettysburg.
Mm-hmm.
He's a brigade commander in Antietam. He takes over for Israel Richardson in the Sixth Corps when he gets mortally wounded at the Sunken Road. Now he's in charge of a division. Chancellorsville, he's a division head. Now, because of Darius Couch is going to leave, take his ball and go home to Pennsylvania, the Department of Susquehanna. Now he gets the big chair. Now he's driving the bus, right? But he's wounded pretty early in that. So it's an easy way to overplay the Hancock card.
Yep.
And that's all because of historical myth.
Yep. And memory. And I think too, in some ways, how he writes about himself. Frank says, always fun to speculate what other top general could have been president. McClellan, McClernand, Stickles, Hooker. What if James McPherson had lived? James McPherson, I think.
Well, we've said that a million times, Frank. I mean, McPherson would have, I don't say would have been, but he would have been, because he was young. They all look old with the beards, but he was young. He was somebody who probably would have been somebody who would be on the top shelf of people who would have been considered president. And not because of his Civil War success, because he was really good. He was,
Mm-hmm. And Hazel's got a good point here. She said, when I see how this war went, the big names are great, but what about those who fought under them? That's as well. Like on the Confederate side of it, I want to study more of Claiborne's guys. So Hiram Granbury, I've done a little bit on. I really like to study him. He's interesting. Also because of the story of his wife, Fanny.
Oh yeah.
Lucius Polk, the bishop's nephew, another one of Granbury, or another one of Claiborne's subordinates. You also have Govan. On the Union side of it, I like to study the 11th Corps subordinates. So Schurz, Schimmelfennig, Gone, Gilsa, Krzyzanowski. Schurz especially because he is the one that when Howard is in charge of, at Gettysburg, when Reynolds is down, Schurz goes up into that role as commander of the 11th Corps. And he's having to do something that he's never done before. And he's a guy that has Howard had a lot of respect for him. And
a lot of these guys in the 11th Corps, speaking guys like Schurz, for example, I mean, they came here from what will become Germany to help learn war experience, kind of like the Irish did, right? Guys like Marr, people along those lines, they came out here to get war experience to fight. And so a guy like Schurz, he came with an illustrious background.
Oh my God.
He escaped from prison, did all these things.
He rescued his commander from Spandau or something, like James Bond style, out of there. He looks like a guy that I would not want to mess with him. Because he looks like someone.
He always says something. He has that Darren drink the last beer out of the fridge look from you every time there's every picture he's in.
I just think Schurz looks like a guy that could really mess you up. And if not, he knows someone that could.
Yeah. And again, that's why Howard was always considered an outsider. And he had the unfortunate experience replacing Franz Siegel and a guy like that. And it's no surprise Howard did better when they out west and things changed for him.
Because there weren't the politics. I mean, there was still the politics, there was still the drama, but it's not the same as, you're not having it out there. And what I think really helped was when Howard went out west, Sherman writes in this letter saying, I really respect you and I want to be your friend. And I know what your reputation is right now. I just want you to know that I don't, I know what the media says. And I think Sherman was doing that because he knew personally how the media could take a story and run with it and completely blow it out of proportion. He'd had that happen to him himself when he's, the insane story about Sherman. So I think he saw what was being written about Chancellorsville as this is media speculation. This is the media blowing it out of proportion again. I want to give this guy the benefit of the doubt that I don't believe what is being written about him.
Yeah. But the
Calvin's, oh,
so
sorry.
I was going to say, but the meat in these stories is always a lower level guys though. And that's why people are fascinated by it. No one's
Yeah.
going to associate with Robert E. Lee or Joseph E. Johnson or George Meade or Ulysses S. Grant. It's always a lower guy. That's why I know people. You like Howard and things like that, but I like the lower. I like the Charles Tildons of the
Well,
world.
I like
People like that. You
Granberry
know,
and Polk
but
and
you can look. Speaking of Gettysburg,
yeah.
you can look, and you can make a real case. Okay, if you really want to, that people like Alexander Webb, guys like Norman Hall, people like that, Samuel Carroll, were much more instrumental Second Corps people than Gibbon
Yeah.
was, or Hancock was.
And that's
And
Calvin just said that
there's a lot of
Norman,
there's a lot
yeah.
of truth to that. Uh, Webb and Hall, and no one knows who the hell Norman Hall is, and there's nothing wrong with it. Some people do, but again, there's always that assumption that the big dogs get all the credit with this stuff, right? Webb's Philadelphia Brigade, again, he's a dude who took that over not too long before that. Um, Hall comes to, we just mentioned him. Even guys like George Lamb Willard, right?
Yeah.
He gets killed, but he does a good job. I know it's the day before, but a lot, I guess, a corps commander, they get credit for everything the subordinates do, but not everyone realizes how instrumental the subordinates are.
Yeah. Well, that's
Right?
like Calvin mentions Norman Hall and Regis de Trobriand as being his favorite Gettysburg Brigade
Regis
commanders.
Philippe Brigitte de Carandin de Trobriand.
God, what a name. And
We
then
did a thing yesterday on Facebook about Civil War names, my favorite ones, and there was some good ones in that. But he's a good one, no question about that.
yeah. And Caleb said, speaking of Siegel, he's another, guy. His performance at Wilson's Creek wasn't the greatest. Was it Pea Ridge? He was on the artillery.
Siegel,
Yeah.
that was probably his best moment. I mean,
Yes.
he ends up at Pea Ridge, and he ends up manning artillery, and by all accounts, he does a pretty good job with that, and he does it reluctantly too. But he's certainly somebody who probably deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah. And then James mentions the covering up of Ebenezer Creek, where they tried to and then they couldn't, and the media got a hold of that.
Yeah, that was a bad deal, no question.
It was really bad. But there was more. Ebenezer Creek was one of three times.
That's the thing too. That's the one that gets all the credit. That's when that gets all the credit is Ebenezer Creek. But that was the third time they did that. But that
Yeah,
was
that Jefferson Davis
but
did
that
that.
was the one. That was because it's called Ebenezer Creek, but it was really a small river.
Yeah.
It was not just a little tiny, like you think of like Willoughby Run or Marsh Creek or these places down here.
Yeah.
It's kind of you're in the marshy area of Georgia, so you're talking about a lot of water in with rapids and stuff like that. So that's why so many people died of that one. It's unfortunate, obviously.
Yeah. But the media got a hold of that and they were not happy about it. Remember,
Yeah,
Stanton had to come down and have a talk with Sherman.
yeah. And he had to do the big thing at the house there in Savannah with
Yep.
all the black religious leaders, and that's a you know he had to play nice with all them, and
Yep.
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you talk about a guy like Sherman who was tunnel visioned on war, and tuned out all the noise of everything around you, including the media
Yep.
and anything around you. So that's his job. That it's as sad as it was, that was his job. So he did it.
He didn't allow reporters in camp, or very few of them got into camp.
No, he did and it's interesting when taking it back to football. Bill Belichick got a lot of his
Yep.
coaching attitude towards the media because of Sherman, and he talked about that. He says, reading a lot of Civil War history, you learn a lot about how the media treated people like Sherman, and he took the same attitude.
Yep.
So there you go.
Most of the media treated Sherman horribly in over the Kentucky incident
Yeah.
and they said he's gone crazy, and Sherman had, there was definitely something up with him, but he came back thanks to his wife going and talking to Lincoln and saying look, I want you to reinstate him. He's not crazy. He's just having a tough time right now, but he'll come back.
Yeah, I say
And
about you all the
Sherman,
time. She's not crazy. She's having a tough time.
oh, jeez.
Anyway,
But yeah, I mentioned people are talking about Norman Hall. Frank said Norman Hall's definitely underrated, especially
people
studying
talk
the
about
20
Norman
math.
Hall.
Yep.
Outstanding. See,
Yeah, that was the one that Kelvin said that Norman Hall is one of
we're
his.
doing God's work today, then, Mary.
Yeah, he was the one that mentioned Norman Hall and Regis de Trobriand.
Yep.
Yes, it's raining out.
No, it's pretty dark all of a sudden. No, the Trobrion's another one because he gets. I mean, you look at here. Obviously, this is where everybody knows him from. That's a tough spot he got put in.
Yeah.
He certainly did.
So Caleb just said that Siegel played hide and seek at Wilson's Creek.
Yeah. No, Wilson's Creek it's a tough one when you look at the big picture. A lot of
Is
Wilson
that
Creek
Pike?
talk today.
Is that Pike's battle? No, that
that
was
was
Pea Ridge.
Pea Ridge. Yeah.
Yeah. Brooklyn said Hooker hanged a man for burning the flag in New Orleans.
Hmm.
Wow. Yeah, we did an episode about Wilson's Creek. Oh
Well, that
God,
was a
like
long time
4 years ago,
Hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
I think it
No,
was in our second year of the podcast, and we're about to go into our we're getting close to our fifth
it'll be our
anniversary.
fifth anniversary
Yep.
next month. We're going to be doing a thing at Getty's Gear for our fifth anniversary, Mary.
We are.
On Labor Day weekend. So if
Yep.
you're in Gettysburg on Labor Day weekend, this Saturday,
Mhm.
we're going to be doing a big shindig over at the at Getty's Gear. Maybe
Yep.
get some flub dubs.
Flub toes. Frank said best name of the Civil War is Decimus A. Ultimus Barziza, the Fourth Texas.
There's a lot of good ones. Someone had posted in that post yesterday about some of the names, and the one that I took a picture of it here. That there's a remember the 62nd Georgia. His name was Peace Love Joy.
What
was his name? Company Peace Love Joy was his name.
Was he the resident hippie?
I don't know. He must have been. But that was a good one. That was certainly a good one. And of course, everyone talks about
states' rights, Sterling
states' rights, things like that. Sterling Am Woods, that's always a funny one. But there's some different names certainly. But we'll definitely watch the spot for future things because we're going to do. If you're in the general vicinity and you're coming to Gettysburg on Labor Day, there'll be a thing. There'll be a big bash going on over at Getty's Gear across from the Jenny Wade House. That'll be fun.
Yeah. Brooklyn says, thank you so much for this podcast. Well, thank you for everyone on here for your support. We've been doing these live streams as long as we've been doing the podcast. So almost 5 years.
5 years dealing with all this. Imagine that.
Yep.
No, but it's definitely good though, because you get to learn a lot of different things because people listen to this stuff and it's cool they do. I never thought anybody actually would. But the fact that you get to either brush up on things or learn things you don't know as far as us to research. It gives you an excuse to study things like this.
Yeah. That's forced me to study more of the war and kind of break away from being just like, I was so focused on, Western theater for so many years.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is Western theater is obviously is a huge part of it. We tend to be more Eastern theater focused here, people in this part of the country. And that's just the way it is because this is where all the newspapers were.
Yeah.
New York, Philly, Boston, Washington. This is where all the newspapers were. So you read a lot about the Eastern battles. But I think as you study, it seems like a lot of people start with one battlefield. And admittedly, a lot of people is Gettysburg for different reasons.
Mine was.
Right. And Gettysburg is my favorite. I don't think it's the most important battle, but it's my favorite battle. But you tend to grow from that and learn more. Like, how do they get to Gettysburg and who came after Gettysburg and what battles, make the most sense and different things with that. And the more you study it, it's amazing. It's a 4-year war, but so much goes on. And it's because it's everyone who fought it was American. Whether you're Northern or Southern, at the end of the day, that's where you are from. Although some Canadians we talked about, and Irish and German.
There's Canadian, Irish. There's like a whole bunch of different ones.
As far as it's a uniquely American experience, because when you look at other civil wars that took place in other countries, they're a lot different, and they're a lot more vicious, and it tends to be. It's very unique that at the end of the American Civil War, except for one guy, there was no hangings.
No.
Right. All the people who survived on the Confederate side, politicians and generals and men, were told to go home, just call it a day. Usually at the end of a civil war, there's mass executions about this and that. And that's a credit to Lincoln, because otherwise it could have been a lot different.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Norman said, I just discovered your podcast a couple of months ago. Love the show and find your style very entertaining. I really like the dive you take into various personalities involved in the war. Thank you.
I appreciate
Estella
that.
said, you two are so knowledgeable. You don't have to do this, but I certainly appreciate it. Well, you're welcome. Like, we enjoy doing it.
Well, we do it because it's fun. I mean, we sit around in the backyard of the fire pit and have these conversations, and all the time, and it's just fun to do this, and I guess publicly, but we kind of get into it as a habit, but it was just, it's fun to do because it gives everyone's learning, and everyone learns different things, and everyone has different levels of knowledge. But despite what some people think, no one knows everything. And
No.
this, and you're always one primary source away from completely sinking your battleship.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the
Right?
thing is like you find, and Bill Pike said that he loves that we're open to different interpretations, which, we wanted to do that going into it. We have our own opinions. And yeah, some of those opinions have changed. I used to think very differently about McClellan when we started doing this. And then by studying it more, I now feel very differently about McClellan. Same with, Rosecrans. My opinion has changed on certain people, just reading more about it. And I've come to appreciate the Eastern theater more, but Western theater is still my thing.
Well,
You know,
there's enough for everybody, and it's neat because a lot of times people make comments on these things. My eyes are better; I can read them, and sometimes that turns into a discussion, and sometimes it
yeah.
turns into a different episode.
Well, that's what's great about this is, Caleb mentions that the community that's grown up around this, and that's the thing that was unexpected. We never expected a community to grow up around this. If we've been saying a lot of the same names on here for nearly 5 years, and that's awesome. But it's great when new people join too. But to see that people talk amongst themselves in the chat is awesome. The questions people ask, we love that because it spurs the discussion. That's the whole point of this is like, we wanted a way to like also talk with the community. And what grew out of that is a place where people can come talk about stuff. And we need to have one again soon, but we need to have another roundtable meeting soon where anybody that's never been to that, we have everybody on Zoom on a weekday evening around 7 o'clock, and we talk for about an hour and a half, just about anything. There's never any set topic at all. And it's really great when people come on that. And it's cool. And it's cool the friends we've made out of this too, as
Well,
well.
that's the best part about it. Like anything else in life, the best thing is the relationships. We met tons of people through this. People we bump into in bars, and people we bump into at reenactments and presentations and stuff like that. And it's great because it's always fun to talk to people. The way you learn is by talking to people. You can read everything you want, but sometimes
Yeah.
the personal experiences and discussions you have. And we made a lot of good friends with this. And it was, like you said a little while ago, that was kind of the very unexpected byproduct, right?
Yeah.
Of things like this, because you get to bump into somebody no matter where you go and talk Civil War.
Mhm.
And it's fun. It's a good group of people. I've said this a million times that the Civil War people, the smartest people I know.
Yeah.
And it's obvious when we get to meet each other in the wild and we get to talk about this.
Yeah.
Right? Even
Yeah.
you, sometimes.
I enjoy talking about it.
I know,
It's like,
but it's pretty good though.
and James and Norman mentioned the beer pairings.
That's an important thing.
Yeah.
When we started this, the whole thing was we wanted to make it like a bar discussion,
Mhm.
the episodes. And so you can't have a bar discussion without beer.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes, is it fun drinking beer at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday? Yeah, a little bit.
Yep.
But it's sometimes, it could be a challenge, especially for you these mornings after a long night.
I didn't have a long night.
You didn't.
Went to bed early last night.
But it's pretty cool though. But I think there's a lot more, like the Amish episode we're going to be doing. That just came out because we just happened to see an Amish wagon roll by at a reenactment we're at.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I wonder what this is all about. And looking in there's not a lot of sources, but there are some sources, and there's enough to cobble some stuff together, and it gives you a different appreciation of people who have different religious type of feelings towards things. And the people, when you think about it, the Amish, for example, they had a ton of money. They were farmers, they spread thrift, and they work hard to make a lot of money. They didn't want to fight. It was against the religion, but because they had money and political pull, they were able to get things like, pay a little bit extra. You won't get called.
Yeah.
But what got them though was the fact that you didn't get baptized till you were 18. You weren't officially Amish or Mennonite until you were 18. So the government wanted to go for the younger kids and force them. So what happens is they took that money and they made them disappear, and they hid them different places until.
Wow.
So there's a lot of intrigue with this.
Yeah.
Which would be fun. Would be fun to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. And that episode is coming out in a couple of weeks, I think.
I think with the 8th of August. Can you even tell it's almost August already? It's almost football time, man. It's almost football season.
I don't know.
Best
But we
time of the year.
Yeah, we should get ready to jump off of here soon. It's almost that time.
Yeah, now we got an exciting day of grocery shopping ahead of us.
Yeah. Very exciting. But yeah, I would thank everybody for coming on here and hanging out with us today. It's been awesome as always. I don't think we'll be back next weekend because we are, as we said, we're going to be at Grant Hall on Saturday we are volunteering from 12 to 2, but Grant Hall is, I think, open from like 10 to 4 or something like that.
If in all seriousness, if you guys, even if you can't make it, then if you get a chance to go to Grant Hall, if you can do it for this time, or if it's another one in November, go and do it because it's really cool.
It is.
I mean, as far as the history, when you walk in there and you feel how creepy it is and how accurate it is, and how they have a separate room in the back where they have a lot of things like the masks they wore and the lily chains they had, and you can look out the window and see where the hangings were. The fact that it's a place that you just can't stumble into. You have to actually make an effort to get in there. It's a very, very, very important part of American history. So hopefully we'll see you there. And then if you're doing the Emerging Civil War Symposium next weekend, Sunday or Friday, Saturday and Sunday, we'll be kicking around that area too.
Yep, on Saturday night.
We'll be down at Chancellorsville and in that area as well. So hopefully people can get out. If you get a chance, reach out to us if you're in the area. Always happy to say hello, get a beer somewhere.
Yep.
In your case, Mary, 10 or 11 beers, I guess. But it's true though.
It's not. But anyway, we thank everybody for being on here and for hanging out with us, not just today, but all the time. You guys join us and ask questions, and we really like that because it spurs the discussion. And thank you for the support with the podcast as well. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So all right,
and thank you to you, Darren, for being an awesome co-host with this.
Well, just happy part of the team, Mary. You know that, you know me. Anyway, so appreciate it. All right, guys, have a great rest of the weekend. It looks like it's thunderstorms popping up and down the East Coast. Hopefully people can stay. Check out the Canada episode if you have not. We'll be doing an episode, like I said, 2 weeks on the Amish and the Mennonites. James McPherson later in the month. And and some fun stuff along the way. All right.